Welcome to the Kimberlite webinar that take a comprehensive look at the drilling equipment and services market. My name is David Batt, President of Kimberlite Research, and I'm glad you're able to view this webinar. I'm accompanied by Andrew Thornton with Kimberlite, and together we'll take you through our 43rd Kimberlite webinar conducted on behalf of the many oil and gas operators globally who participate in our industry studies. In past webinars, we've addressed the artificial lift, hydraulic fracturing, completions, intervention, and surface wellhead markets, among many others. If you would like access to one of our prior webinars, just reach out to us and we'll connect you. We often collaborate with oil and gas operators directly with customized presentations to your organization to help you identify best value in your selection for oil field services. If you have an interest, just reach out to us. Today, we'll be taking a look at the drilling equipment and services market and see how the suppliers, both large and small, stack up in terms of overall technology, performance, and service quality. We'll be covering mud motors, MWD, rotary steerables, bits, and fluids. For those of you that are less familiar with Kimberlite Research, we'll give a brief background and then we'll dive in. Each year, Kimberlite Research conducts 3,000 one-on-one phone interviews with oil and gas operators all around the world. In talking to your peers, we collect feedback on your operational needs, technology challenges, and how the suppliers are performing. From those interviews, we produce a series of reports talking to geologists, drilling engineers, subsea engineers, completion and production, and today we'll be addressing the drilling services market, including some information on tubular running services and managed pressure drilling. The data set's rich and multidimensional, and in many of the exhibits that we'll be reviewing with you today, we'll be using this quadrant map or value map. In this map, we're depicting oil field service company performance on the horizontal x-axis versus pricing competitiveness on the vertical y-axis. Any oil field service provider, based on feedback from you and your peers in the industry that plots in the top right-hand quadrant, is viewed as a premium provider of oil field services. Costs more, but worth it. Any oil field service company based on customer reviews plotting in the bottom left-hand quadrant is viewed as more of a discount provider, but delivering good value for the performance and the pricing for which they offer, and well positioned in the fair value fairway. Any oil field service provider positioned in the bottom right is viewed as being value advantaged and really positioned to deliver best overall value in the eyes of your peers in the industry and positioned to grow their business. In any oil field service provider in the top left-hand quadrant is viewed as being competitively disadvantaged with an opportunity to improve performance or to maybe rethink how they're approaching the market. So with that, why don't we go ahead and kick off and dive in? Well, Andrew, what can you tell us about the markets and any projections for what we're getting ready to see in 25?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, David. So let's start with the bit that everyone's always most interested in, which is rig count. Get a lot of questions around this. Right now, we project kind of lower 48 US land rig count down about 12 to 13% year over year. We'll see how the second half of this year plays out, but we're currently sitting around that 460 mark ending Q2, so call it flat for the remainder of the year. It's about down 12, 13%. How that's then translating into kind of a well count, a drilling activity, you can see US land down 9%. So you'll notice I said rigs down 12, 13%, wells down about 9%. That's effectively the efficiency we've been seeing in the US land market, more wells per rig. And we'll see a few statistics on that in a little bit.
So we're drilling more quickly.
We're drilling quicker, able to move from one pad to the other faster, or even more pad drilling.
Okay.
In terms of the next, out to 2025, if we take that, that rig count, hold it relatively flat. Next year, the market will be down about 2% from what we're currently seeing and what the people we've spoken to are suggesting. Now, the growth areas continue to be international land and offshore. You can see sort of mid-single digit growth to high single digits. So in the case of offshore, you're looking at 12 to 13% growth year over year. It's going to start to moderate probably towards the back half of 2025. The deep water will start to moderate a little bit quicker, just simply put. There is only so many deep water rigs that can actually go around. Jackups, there's a little bit more variability in there. Now, when I go activity, the next question I ask is, well, how does that impact pricing in terms of supply and demand? Here's what we've got in terms of that. So, so we talk about that North America market, relatively flat overall, down a little bit. Interestingly, pricing expectations are holding flat as well. So even though activity was down, pricing relatively flat. And what you can see is that some people are getting price increases, some people are getting decreases or expectations. Service quality has a lot to play within this bucket. If you're able to deliver differentiated value and service, you're still able to achieve price because all of those efficiencies come at a cost. If you're not able to differentiate yourself, you're probably going to be under pricing pressure.
So the North America land market, it's not a 100% price-driven market.
100%.
Performance and service quality do make a difference.
And make a huge difference. And we'll see that in just a second. As goes the activity, international land and offshore, this is where the pricing increases continue to play in. So 7% increases expecting internationally, close to double digits offshore for like products and services. Now, what I wanted to stop here is we've just talked a little bit about efficiencies and what's that playing in. So we just saw the rig count down and we just saw the well count down. Well, this is production in the United States. And this is the rig count down here in the blue. And you see, we continue to produce more and more with less and less. And how are we able to do that? This is a kind of a prelim from our hydraulic fracturing report coming up in a few weeks' time.
Right.
But here's your drilling days. So you talked about faster drilling.
Right.
We're down another 2% year over year in terms of days drilled. Completion days also down. Average lateral length continues to push out and to increase. That's average. So some people who are stepping far out beyond this 10,000, 11,000 feet. Stages per well also up, proppant per foot. So effectively, our operators are able to achieve more and more with less and less. And that's why you're seeing this situation where production continues to increase and rig count, which historically would have followed, isn't necessarily trending anymore. So you mash all of this together, the activity, the pricing,
there's also completion efficiencies.
The completion efficiency. And so I go to expenditures, so CapEx or OpEx, depending on which way you want to look at it. So this is something we've been tracking for a number of years now, which is sentiment index. So we asked a very simple question. Do you anticipate, your expenditures to increase, decrease, stay the same year over year? And for those of you who've not seen this before, anything above 50 equals expansion or growth, anything below 50 equals contraction. So you can see on a global basis, we're looking at about 71 index, North America land 57, so flat, slightly up. That's effectively inflation. But the key growth, again, with activity and pricing is coming international land and offshore. We can then see how this has then trended over time. Here's North America in that green line. You can see we hit the bottoms of COVID, really rebounded very, very strongly for the first few years after COVID. And now it's kind of moderated really for the past year or so in terms of activity, with the growth coming internationally and offshore.
Well, Andrew, thanks for that summary as to what the market's doing. Any thoughts as to what drilling technologies or adoption of various technologies that are making a difference for the operators?
Yep. Yeah. No. So in our study, we asked a straightforward question, what are the developments in technology that have actually given you benefit over the past 12 to 24 months? And we've broken it down, those same buckets, North America, international land, and offshore. Now, you can see in North America, remote operations, real-time data has jumped to the top of the list, which is quite interesting. Then mud motor improvements and RSS. Historically, bit technology, which we see down here at number 4, would actually be pretty close to the top of the list in terms of improvements. So suspicion there is that there's kind of a convergence to the mean on overall bit technology, and it's now data and remote operations and the reliability of RSS and the bottom hole assembly, which has seen a lot of improvement.
Okay.
Now, talk about RSS, let's shift to the international land market, and there it is sitting at the top. But there's another one which is kicking in here in international land and offshore, which is managed pressure drilling.
Yeah.
So whether that be narrow pressure windows, safety, difficult temperatures and pressures to deal with, managed pressure drilling is starting to see an increased adoption, at least from a technology development standpoint, internationally and offshore. RSS also kicking in there as well. Now we talk about digital, and we just saw that a second ago. This for me is a really interesting one, which is, what share of wells to be drilled using automated technology? So the dream of the fully automated well, where everything's being done with a computer and sensors back to surface. Back when we did this survey in 2018, everyone said in 5 years' time, at least 40% of my wells are going to be fully automated. Well, here we are in 2024, and in 5 years' time, we're now thinking 25% of my wells are going to be fully automated. So what's happening is that expectation's kicking to the right.
Yep.
Do we see parts of the well automated? Absolutely. Do we see digital technologies? Absolutely. But the fully automated well hasn't really materialized yet. Everyone's knows it's coming, thinks it's coming, but it's just not ready yet. Now, this is a question we've asked for the first time, and it's really interesting and starting to kind of show us some of the dynamics of what's going on. So earlier we talked about the efficiencies. We talked about the lateral length. We talked about how we're pushing the envelope.
Right.
Well, with that comes challenges. And so high frequency torsional oscillation, HFTO, vibration's a killer. Share of wells experiencing HFTO, you can see on a global basis, it's about a quarter of the wells. Significant component, more in North America than international land and offshore. So this is going to start to play more and more of a role going forward as we see people challenging with vibration more and more to just try and pushing the boundaries. What's interesting is there is a range of suppliers available to offer a solution. Whether or not they have the perfect solution yet is a question. You can see international land and offshore, it's your usual suspects when it comes to drilling: SLB, Baker, Halliburton, NOV, Weatherford. But you look at US land, and now we've got some specialist HFTO. So Tomax is sitting in there, Scout, DWS, Neo Oil Tools sits over here, and others. But interestingly, look, that no supplier, as far as these people are concerned, has an answer for HFTO yet. So
the room for additional innovation.
Exactly. Now, we mentioned it earlier, but here's another area of the oil field that's really developing, which is, managed pressure drilling. We can see around a quarter of the wells globally using MPD due to those narrow pressure windows or wellbore stability and controls. When we look at who's actually, the strongest in this market, MPD, North America land has a lot of players out there. We've got several listed here, and I can tell you there's a lot more in that all others bucket. But when you shift to the international land and offshore, it's really Weatherford who stands out as the primary MPD supplier around the world. And that's supported by their net promoter score, a great indicator of customer loyalty, which is coming in at 51% on a global basis versus, the category average of 41. So they're very strong. Halliburton, also not shy at all at 41%, and providing a little bit of a run for the money for Weatherford in certain markets.
Absolutely.
So, David,
that's a lot.
That's a lot. In terms of, the market, what else are you seeing out there?
Sure. Why don't we turn our attention to the competitive dynamics a little bit?
Okay.
And maybe start with maybe mud motors really quick. When we go to mud motors, what we find is it's a heavily fragmented market with many suppliers. The majority of wells are using mud motors internationally and offshore, virtually all the wells in North America land. When we ask the oil and gas operators who they're using for mud motors, you can see in North America land, they cited 34 different suppliers, which means, there's many choices for the oil and gas operators to go find their mud motor needs. Obviously, one of the biggest needs and demands for mud motors for improvement is longer durability and longevity. Some of that's due to HFTO and the vibration that you talked about. Some of it's just due to QAQC, fit, a whole bunch of things. When we look at the market share for North America land for mud motors, we see companies like NOV and Phoenix and Baker continuing to kind of, defend and grow their shares. Others maintaining relatively static. When you move internationally, the market consolidates quite a bit around the big three, as well as offshore. What's interesting, though, when we ask the oil and gas operators to rate the performance of their mud motor suppliers on a scale of 1 to 10 on these key performance measures, such as mud motor reliability and quality, or competency of field service personnel, and overall mud motor performance and technical support, we see kind of a wide range in performance amongst all these many mud motor suppliers. So as an oil and gas operator, the good news is you have many choices. That's great. The bad news is you have a lot of due diligence to do to try to figure out which supplier has the right mud motor technology for your application. When we benchmark these performance reviews, over the years, we've captured interviews from over 3,000 users and nearly just under 200,000 performance review ratings across these BHA assembly components. what we find is a huge range in performance levels amongst the various suppliers. And so some suppliers tend to, like NOV and SLB, trying to get customer reviews that tend to rate a little bit higher than the industry benchmark. Others tend not to, and this varies by region.
Mm-hmm.
When you display this down to the value map for the competitive landscape, what you find is in North America land, total directional, pro-directional, MS directional, and scientific drilling tend to be viewed as delivering best overall value.
Mm-hmm.
Baker Hughes prominently positioned as a cost more but worth it premium-based supplier. And then you see several other material suppliers, Halliburton, Phoenix, NOV, and Altitude, viewed as delivering good value. There are a few suppliers over here, including SLB, whose value propositions are being challenged in the eyes of the oil and gas operators. When you move internationally, where the market's far more consolidated, you see a very normally differentiated market. Premium-based supplier, SLB, pay more, get more. Baker Hughes and Weatherford positioned more as an alternative value-based alternative. And so everyone's really delivering really strong value. NOV, albeit quite smaller, well positioned to continue and grow their footprint internationally, particularly in the Middle East. When you move offshore, you see the competitive landscape tighten up quite a bit.
It's extremely tight correlation there.
Yeah. And so when you start to move into, say, MWD, very similarly, you see a very fragmented market with many choices. And so again, the due diligence for the operators to try to figure out who's got the best telemetry and best measurements for MWD. What you find, though, in MWD, you have suppliers like Gordon Technologies, who have really rocketed to the top of the market share leadership here in North America land, because solid state electronics and really reliable equipment is really where they have established their prominence in the market. But you also see companies like Phoenix and Baker Hughes beginning to grow their MWD business. As you know, Baker Hughes acquired Evo1 with their dual telemetry and such. When you move internationally, again, the market tightens up to the big three, along with Weatherford. And when you move offshore, again, the big three tend to dominate the market presence. Again, we see quite a bit of performance variability. So, if you're an oil and gas operator, you really just can't simply go on lowest price, because depending upon the performance attributes that you're really looking for to accomplish the drilling of your wells, you really may need to focus on other performance attributes in addition to pricing. So when you look at the overall competitive landscape in North America land, again, you'll find companies like Scientific Drilling consistently delivering good value year to year over the many years we've been doing our research. Total directional, pro-directional, MS directional is very prominently displayed in the premium quadrant space, along with Baker Hughes. You've got Halliburton, SLB, and Phoenix being challenged a bit. And Gordon's performance on the equipment is really quite strong. Gordon's performance declined considerably over the last 2 to 3 years just due to service and support. They grew so quickly, but their performance is clearly stabilized into the fair value fairway. And so they'll continue to be a very dominant player in this market. Internationally, again, you see differentiated value.
Perfectly segmented and differentiated market.
You do. And offshore, you see SLB and Baker Hughes kind of going at it toe to toe. Halliburton's performance is a little bit off from these big two, but still very close to the fair value fairway. When we move into rotary steerables, this is an area of a lot of interest because it's being used.
Well, we saw it up top with the most improvements sort of delivering value.
It really is. And what we find is that the adoption rate of rotary steerables in the green line here for North America land has grown from a low of 20% in 2016 up to 38% in 2024. And so, the rotary steerables being used fairly prominently and consistently over the years in the offshore market. And then the international land has also shown some adoption growth. When we take a look at where the rotary steerables are principally being used in North America land, it's principally in the lateral.
Yeah.
And to your point earlier about being able to drill wells more quickly, virtually half of the operators, 53%, cite that they're able to drill the lateral all on a single run, because that saves a day of drilling.
It's a huge amount of savings right there.
Tool reliability is still a key concern for improvement, along with improved data rates, like you talked about earlier. In order to go to automated drilling and advanced analytics and drilling, we're going to have to probably, get beyond 1 or 2 bits per second consistently,
Mhm.
and we're going to have to increase our telemetry capabilities. When we take a look at the market share for North America Land and rotary steerable, you see something that's really quite unique in a market. In North America Land, there's literally hundreds of oilfield service
Mhm.
company providers to choose from across a wide variety of services. When you get the rotary steerable, however, these 2 suppliers have 80+% market share.
Yeah.
And so Halliburton iCruise is aggressively entering the market with a new commercial offering to not only serve operators directly, but also to partner with channel partners like Quantum Energy or even to sell their iCruise. And so, they'll provide the iCruise to the market and they can unbundle it, if you will, from the mud motor and MWD. And so that's going to give Halliburton an opportunity to continue to grow in the North America land market, particularly as adoption continues to increase. Internationally and offshore, again, the market's really consolidated to the big 3, but internationally, you see Weatherford continuing to gain some prominence, particularly in the Middle East, delivering strong value.
Yeah, I think it's the first time I've ever seen the North American market be consolidated more than offshore and international.
Exactly. And rotary steerables are really difficult technology to consistently perform in. And you can see that the performance reviews based on the oil and gas operators globally each year, you can show that there is some variance. Some suppliers like SLB and Baker tend to kind of rate near the top on reliability and even on overall performance of the rotary steerables. When you take a look at the overall competitive landscape in North America lands, you've got, the iCruise CX that's out as a good alternative. You've got DTEC and you've got Scientific Drilling's Halo that continues to get great remarks. And they don't have very many runs compared to Schlumberger or Baker Hughes. Baker Hughes' Lucida has consistently shown improvement year on year over the last 2 to 3 years, and they're very prominently displayed as a very value advantage position. SLB's Orbit and Power Drive have had, some more critical customer reviews of late, and they've been kind of shifting from the top right quadrant, and they're starting to scoot over here to the left. Internationally, though, we see nice diversified value. Weatherford viewed as a nice, attractive value-based alternative. Baker Hughes and Halliburton kind of going at it toe to toe. SLB kind of premium and it costs more, but worth it. Offshore, we see again SLB in the premium quadrant. Through our interactive software, we have the ability, if I go on the rotary steerables and go into the Permian Basin, and if we wanted to kind of take a look at how Baker Hughes Lucida has been kind of moving into the correct direction from 22 to 23 to 24, you can see Baker Hughes continuing to invest to improve their performance.
Seems like they had some early struggles, but have got over that now.
Whereas you can see where, Schlumberger's reviews have been a little bit more critical. And, I share this to the oil and gas operators because in the event you need to do like a customized analysis of Baker Hughes versus SLB in the Permian Basin, you can start to see that based on the voice of your peers and the performance reviews of your peers, where Baker Hughes oftentimes will be viewed as outperforming SLB in terms of rotary steerable overall performance and perhaps technical support. Whereas maybe Power Drive and Orbit had a little bit better availability, all right? Because as you know, Baker Hughes has lots of demands for their tools and they do come from overseas. And so you start to kind of see how this competitive assessment starts to stack up a little bit. So we're glad to go into details as needed for you. When you move in the drill bits, what we see is that fixed cutter is principally used. Longer improved durability is the number one desired improvement. We find that on a global basis, let's just go in by region. If you look at North America land, Ulterra continues to be the market share leader, followed very closely by Baker Hughes. And then, but when you go internationally, now you start to get the heavyweights, SLB, Smith Bits, and Baker Hughes, Hughes Christian going toe to toe, and very similarly in the offshore market. Those are the 2 big heavyweights. We do see variability in performance. And when we take a look at the competitive landscape in North America land, we find that Ulterra, NOV, Reed Hycalog, and even Beryl has shown improvement year on year. Traditionally, Beryl's been in the bottom left-hand quadrant, but they've been showing improvements and have creeped into the value advantage quadrant. Internationally, you can see SLB, the premium provider, NOV, the value-based alternative, and Hughes Christian, rock solid, meeting all industry expectations. Offshore, we see some differentiated value, but again, we start to see some of these smaller
Varel,
specialty
NOV,
providers.
yeah.
They're trying to enter into the market here. If we wrap it up with drilling fluids and solids control really quick, what we find is that by region in North America land, you've got Halliburton, the market share leader, but AES Drilling Fluids, part of the CS family, are really giving Halliburton a run for the money in the North America land. And Newpark continues to kind of carve out their space. Internationally, though, you find that MI Swaco is edging out Halliburton and Baroid and similar in the offshore market for market share leadership. Quite a bit of variance in performance. When you take a look at what's going on in the U.S. land market, you see a lot of these smaller specialty providers. You know, keep in mind, there's 35 different drilling fluid suppliers cited in U.S. land, and only 9 really cited in Canada, where CES, Newpark, and Blackstone are kind of the preeminent providers. When you move international and offshore, what you tend to find is internationally, Schlumberger, MI, is viewed as that premium-based supplier. Newpark is the value-based advantage. And you really get Halliburton at a disadvantage competitively to SLB, whereas when you move offshore, they're kind of competing toe-to-toe. To eliminate that a bit further in international land, you can see how SLB has tremendous competitive advantage, but Halliburton's mainly competing against SLB principally on price, whereas offshore, their performance is viewed fairly identical, but Halliburton is exhibiting a little bit better supply chain capabilities and availability coupled with pricing competitiveness. And then if we wrap it up for solids control, it's a very fragmented market. You know, you've got 30, 40 different suppliers easily cited as being used globally. When you just look at the customer loyalty ratings, however, what you find is that Schlumberger and NOV Brant tend to have the highest customer loyalty as measured by the Net Promoter Score. So again, many different options there. So with Andrew, I guess just to kind of wrap things up here for everyone viewing our webinar, what do you see coming up the rest of the year for us in terms of reports in 24? And what do you see, how you think the market's going to end up?
Sure. No, let me start with the market. So thanks, David, for that. Look, for 2024, we continue to watch discipline in bringing supply online.
Right.
Okay, we've got a lot of supply out there right now, and everyone's being relatively disciplined. So
good.
Keep that message. I'm also looking for efficiencies. That are continuing to allow our US land operators in particular to achieve more with less. We continue to see every time everyone says we've hit the efficiency window, we go and we find some more. So
keep pushing the limits.
Keep pushing the limits. That's allowing that production that we saw earlier to be achieved with historically low rig counts. Now, the other side of that equation is those OFS suppliers with differentiating technology and service levels that we just saw, they're probably going to be the winners out of this as they can then start to partner with and help drive those efficiencies higher and higher and higher. We've got tightness in the international offshore markets is going to continue to drive that pricing. And I think operators in those markets are going to continue to invest. And then when we talk about technologies, digital, AI, ML, all of those things, remote operations, I think is going to be a continuing trend. In terms of here at Kimberlite, what we've got coming up, July, we're going to be publishing hydraulic fracturing, so about just over 2 weeks' time, and then follow up by perforating. And then in August, we'll be coming out with a whole host of artificial lift and production chemical reports. We've got some future webinars on all of those and broadcasts. So for our oilfield operators, please look out for those as we go through those and share further updates in the coming months.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew. And thanks again to everyone for watching our webinar. I want to thank the many oil and gas operators worldwide who participate in our research. If you have any questions or need to delve into any of these issues more deeply, just feel free to reach out. Thanks again and have a great rest of your week. Bye now.